There's no switch to flip to become a better man, but there is a journey that a broken boy can take to become the man that God created him to be. And that's the invitation with the Outrider, is to enter into that journey. You have to be able to be awakened to the fact that there's something in me that it's not me. There's stuff on me that's not a part of me, and I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
Acknowledging your wound does not make you weak. It literally might be one of the most courageous things that you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I drop down even lower and ask you guys a vulnerable question?
Go for it.
When did you both know you were a man?
Dang, Ian.
Well, okay.
Joseph Mize, when did
maybe
you
we
know
back
you were a
that
man?
up and say, like, let's define man, right? Because there are many different definitions, many different ways that the world will define what a man is.
Or when did you think you were a man?
When did I think I was a man? When I stood up to my dad for the first time.
How old were you?
15.
15. Okay. And so that thought was in your head then, like, I'm a man now. What sort of pressure came with that?
The pressure was already there because in our story, my dad's, there's some trauma. It's significant. I do write about it in the book, but it's not for this time. That took my dad out.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had to carry a lot of weight around. Now, I wasn't running the tractors. I wasn't running my dad's business. I wasn't running my dad's
You
farm.
weren't paying the bills. You weren't.
No,
yeah.
no.
You weren't.
But I was filling a lot of voids on my mom's behalf. On his behalf for my mother, right? I was feeling the pressure of his kingdom, caring for my younger siblings. At the same time that this happened, I had a new baby brother, and then we got another baby brother. So I'm the oldest. So I was taking care of them, putting them to sleep, shared a room with one of them. When he was
you were like,
born.
I'm going to step into that void.
Yeah, I was, and my mom appreciated it, right?
Yeah.
So I felt I was getting the value from my mom of filling the gap where my dad wasn't able to. And so I began to feel the value in stepping into a manly story at about 9 years old, to where I began to carry a world that was way too heavy for me. And then at 15, when dad was able to kind of circle back in, and I was like, who do you think you are, coming back in here and telling me what to do? Though he was there, he just wasn't, he was oblivious. So I was like,
And at 15, did you want to be a man?
I wanted to be out, is what I wanted to be.
And
so
I
think
know some
that
of this may be hindsight, right?
Yeah.
So I want to respect that, but it's like at 15, there was something there. It was like, my role is not working. I've got to do something more powerful, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I wanted out.
Yeah. Where I began to shift, I think it's in that time frame, 15, 16, where I began to make the shift in myself is, and this is what we'll do, especially when it comes to father wounds, we'll begin to make vows. I'll never be like my dad.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And so I began to frame things up. I'm going to treat my wife better. I'm going to treat my children better. They will not put up with this kind of a stuff from me. And so that shift work I was about 15, 16, where I began to make those declarations in my life that I will be a different man.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad part is that story really carried out. I tried to do that under my own power and my own authority.
Yeah.
And guess what? I became my father's son.
Mm-hmm.
So you were the down rider needing to be rescued. And at 15, was it almost like, I'm going to come to my own rescue?
Totally. I was Rainbow.
There it is. Yeah. Chan?
Yeah.
When did you know you were a man?
Man, I'm just thinking of so many similarities with Joseph's story. Like, big trauma story, like so many of us have big trauma stories.
Yeah.
I was a young man that inherited a kingdom way before he was ready to inherit a kingdom. My dad left his station as a dad, as a husband, and I just rushed right in. And so, like, I'm taking on manly responsibilities to help the family function. So I would say there's a very young, immature version of myself that that made some resolutions to be the man that I didn't have growing up.
What age or ages?
Oh man, I would say by the time I was 14, 15, I'm already making some very solid agreements with like, this is the kind of man I am going to be when I grow up to be one. I was already having ideas like, um, I I know what it means to be a man. I just need to do the opposite of what my dad did, right? But age has taught me, experience has taught me, um, that just because you know what not to do doesn't mean you know what to do.
Right.
And so for me, like it has been an ongoing process of maturity and growing into manhood. I would definitely say by the time I was in my late 20s, like there was some ownership of like, I'm getting married, I'm financially like taking care of myself, stepping into like parenthood, all of that by the time I'm in my 30s for sure. But I would say like in the past like 6 or 7 years, like really feeling solid as a man who like uses his story of vulnerability, offers that up, and like leads men to places of healing in their own journey. To me, that's probably one of the, like being an outrider, it's probably one of the most manly things that I get to do.
So downrider 14, but for sure 15, 14. Mine was about 16, like for sure 16, but probably felt it before then. Can y'all imagine? Because we all have sons. Our boys, us at 15, us when they were 14 or 15, saying you're a man now, and just saying good luck.
Well, there's ancient part of that is true. I think that's where the journey of manhood kind of sort of really begins. And John Eldridge kind of talks about this in his book Fathered by God, with the different stages of masculinity. Right? There's the boyhood stage, there's the cowboy stage, and then there's the warrior stage. So that's kind of where you have, and they kind of track with the decades of our life, right? And then after the warrior, there's the lover, and then there's king, and then sage. Did I miss one? I think I got them all.
I think what you're naming is like the bypass. There were so many things in our stories that just got bypassed, and there was no like process of initiation, right?
Yeah. So where I was going with that is there are ancient initiation ceremonies for boys at about 13. You know, because there's something true about that stage in life that we need to move towards manhood, towards being able, and what that is to be invited. These are the core longings of being invited, being trained, and then being trusted. So if you're invited into something without being trained, then there's no way that you're going to be able to trust or be trusted.
Do you think most men have that experience?
I think so.
Of the invitation and being trusted and empowered?
No. I think of missing the trust, missing they probably get an invitation of I mean, for what it looked like for me was more of a airline, flight safety demonstration. No, go build a kingdom, do this. I remember one fight that I got into with my dad because he told me to bring him a lug wrench. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was 15. This is the day.
Yep.
Right. But he was yelling at me for like, what is a lug wrench? He's like, a tire tool, you, and I was like, if you would teach me and train me and tell me what the so that's where I was at him on that, because, I mean, I was with him, and I mean, there wasn't really much of anything on the farm that I couldn't do, but there was zero training, if you will. I had that the first summer that we bought our property up on the mountain. And that was kind of like a glorious time frame. I was 9 years old. It was just before the news of trauma that took our family out came about.
He was showing you some things.
He was showing me how to build fences, how to learn how to drive the truck, standard transmission. I drove the tractor, used the chainsaw, man, I carried a pistol. I'm 9 years old. Like all of this stuff was going on during that. So that it was kind of sort of beginning, but trauma took him out. And, you know, I was a casualty. He became a downrider.
Yeah. And the reason I'm dropping into this is because I think people that will listen to this they're wondering, you know, when did I become a man? And a lot of men still feel like boys.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because a lot of us did not get that rescue or the invitation to move into this place of manhood, of you have what it takes. You know, and for me, what comes up, there's so many different scenes, but, you know, Braveheart especially, you know, that's one we love, where Wallace's buddy Amish, the big redhead guy, you know, and his dad has this mortal wound, you know, and he says, and he looks at him and he says, son, I'm dying. And he says, no, you're going to live. And then he says, I've lived long enough to see you become the man that you are. And I think for so many of us, we long for that passage of like the knighthood, you know, the sword on the shoulder, sort of, you've got what it takes. Or the, you know, in the Jewish culture, you're not a man till you're 30, you know, and then there's celebration. And now there's bar mitzvah, you know, isn't that like a transition? I can't remember.
That's the 13 kind of transition, but you don't become the man until 30, right?
Yeah, till
the
30.
Process begins.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like, and like it's a process. And I think for so many of us, we're still in this process and we never got the acknowledgement that I've lived long enough to see you become the man that you are, that bestowal. And I love how Eldridge says this, that masculinity bestows masculinity. And so many of us did not get that.
Yeah.
And so we stayed in this place of woundedness, of that downrider. And then, you know, if a rescue comes along, again, it's like, I don't know if I'm worthy of it. I don't even know what to do with this. I don't know how to receive it. And that's why I brought this up with our sons, like 14, 15 years old. It's like, would we want them saying what we're saying in here? That's when I had to become a man, you know, in the process that we did, right? Because a lot of us has stumbled into our manhood. And sometimes that invitation was masked with things like pornography, you know, like where we wanted to, like we were ready because hormones and all this stuff to have these talks. It's not just a talk, right? I ask people that on purpose. When'd you have the sex talk? Like it's a conversation. You know, you see how those cows reproduce out on the farm? That's how you make babies, you know? Now, what is the process of love? What is the process of pursuing heart? You know, there's this invitation that we all are curious about. And often what we got fed was a lie.
Yep.
Which is the venom then, you know, not just the fangs, but the venom of like, I'm stumbling into this idea of what it is to be a man, you know, and then how great of a plan of success that sets us up for. You know, what is a story with that for me?
I think the difference is there are so many of us who have that story of this is when I had to become a man.
Yeah.
Versus this is when I was initiated. This is when I was invited into manhood. Yeah. This is when I got to like take the glorious way, the path towards becoming the man. I wasn't forced. I wasn't made to be something before my time came. And I love that scene from Braveheart that you're describing where Amish's dad is dying. Like what his final words to his son was really his dad was a witness. His dad was a witness to him becoming the man that he was. And how many of us don't have someone who's been a witness to that?
Which is similar to like rescue. If I can witness you move into an invitation. I've seen this at Man Alive when, you know, I saw you two guys working, you know, with all these guys and just inviting them into this place and just hearing, especially during the prayer sessions, you know, the crying and this hurt that these men had. It was the boy inside. You know, it was a 14 or 15-year-old that said, I wanted to do well, but I didn't know how.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? There's no switch to flip to become a better man, but there is a journey that a broken boy can take to become the man that God created him to be. And that's the invitation with the Outrider, is to enter into that journey. And part of that, this is why this chapter is in the pathway of beloved awakening. You have to be able to be awakened to the fact that There's something in me that it's not me. There's stuff on me that's not a part of me, and I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and then what do you do about it? Well, you don't go about the process on your own. It's like, what do they say that the first thing to step into recovery, right, is to first admit that you're addicted. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to admit that
Get
there's
out of denial.
Yeah, you can't. So acknowledging your wound does not make you weak. It literally might be one of the most courageous things that you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Say that again.
Acknowledging your wound does not make you weak. It may, in fact, be one of the bravest things that you will ever do, and one of the most loving things that you could possibly do for the people that you love the most. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't acknowledge the wound and the venom that's tied to it, then that is going to continue to pass on to your children. Whether or not you try your darndest to make sure that you're passing on the good training and the different way of living life. I'm not going to be like my dad. I will do things differently. Mm-hmm. You're going to pass on some of that good stuff. But if the toxin still remains in you, you will pass it on inevitably. Mm-hmm. You will pass on both treasure and toxin. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to pass on any toxin. Mm-hmm. I did. And I'm in the process now of living that life with my family, removing that toxin from all of us. Mm-hmm. Like, we're in this together for the first time in my life. I mean, and actually where all this exploded last fall. Mm-hmm. My wife, Lori, and I were both gone to different events. Mm-hmm. She was in Colorado. I was in Texas. My children were home. My oldest son was there and his family, and my younger two. My oldest daughter lived at the time in Virginia Beach, where my son-in-law is stationed in the Navy. But some stuff was going on, and they all rallied and circled the wagons. And like, I was so proud of them. And Jesus had told me long ago, when I was wanting to move forward, I had this vision, I had this calling, I had this passion in me, this fire that was burning. I wanted to get it done for Jesus. And he just kept telling me to wait, trust the process. As your family comes together, the kingdom will grow. And that was the first weekend where something happened, and my kids were able to finally fully partner together. And from that moment, man, everything has exploded from October of 25 to right now. It's June 3rd of 26. You know, the book was finished, all of the songs produced and created. Now we're doing the podcast. Like, I didn't do this. I've been trying to make this happen for a long time, but something happened that weekend where my family was together, fully and completely able to circle the wagons. And out of that, there's an explosion of the river of life flowing in us. It's not anything that I did specifically. The only thing I can tell you that I have done is submit again and again and again to the process.
And trust the process.
And trust the process and stay close to the shepherd. That's the direction that the book takes you, is an invitation. That's the only way that this happens, is to stay close to the shepherd so that you can be cleansed completely and continually by his blood. And then by sharing the stories of your time with him on the trail, as you stay close to him, is going to encourage others into that process.
I'm okay with people using like wound, hurt, trauma interchangeably. It's a good question about like, what is trauma? And I want to say again, like, not everything that happens to us is trauma. But it's hard to, somebody says I've been traumatized, and, I come back and say, no, you really weren't traumatized. Like, I can lose them real quick if I invalidate that real quick. But I think, as we sit with our stories, we do realize some things are more painful than others, but it really is the message that comes up, because everybody has different normal days. Like, if you're an Army Ranger, your normal day is very different from an IT guy, so comparison is also shame's game. But, trauma, there's a definition that I love that Stephen Levine, author of Waking the Tiger, uses. And he says, anything that the brain is not able to process, anything the brain's not developmentally able to process. It's like 9/11, that was trauma for all of us. How do you process that? Mm-hmm. How do you process divorce? How do you process abuse? How do you process bankruptcy? How do you process, just life transitions, diagnosis, all these things? That all can be trauma. And a lot of us, we get stuck in that event. And Bessel van der Kolk uses in his research and in his book, The Body Keeps a Score, that, we all have fractured personalities because there's different times we had to become somebody else because of some sort of event. And then trauma can be an event. It can be a sequence of things. It can be self-sabotage. A lot of us self-sabotage, and it's traumatic because of that. Trauma spiritually, I mean, just clergy abuse. We don't have to go far, with that. And also just this certain dogma that has come from the realm of religion. I've seen people have to go to acute care because of a fear of hell, because of doctrine, abuse and whatnot, that I would put definitely in that category of trauma. That's an existential trauma. My existence, my purpose, right. Me, looking at eternity. I myself, had, go through that. But, that's what it comes up initially, Chan. What comes up for you with that?
Like so many other like clinical terms, like psychobabble that we get wrapped up in. Like trauma is just one of those words that has come to the surface. Yeah. For so many people, it's overused, and so the vast majority of us have some level of trauma on some level, but we are like naming certain things as trauma when it may or may not be. We'll talk about big trauma and little trauma. Right. I don't know. In my experience, like I encounter a lot of people who are coming to counseling and they're naming things as trauma. And then it becomes almost like their excuse to continue to live out their lives in the debilitated way that they're living their life, as opposed to, let's look at this trauma. Let's take a close look at your wound, your hurt, your pain, and how has all of that informed your story? What are the messages? What are the messages that have come from those experiences? Because what you're describing like happened years ago. Those things aren't happening to you now. You're not being hurt by that now, other than the fact that you continue to believe a certain thing about yourself because of what you believed sometimes years ago.
Yeah. And it can impact the body. It can drop down from the prefrontal cortex. I don't want to get too geeky with it, right? But it can drop from the prefrontal cortex, which is the last part of our brain to develop. For males, it's about 26 to 28. And then females is 24. So they got us beat by maturing before us. I always tell them that. Like they got us beat,
Insurance companies know that.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And there's a part of the brain that it's theorized it's right by the amygdala, that the superior colliculi, where they believe is like that's where our files of trauma are. That's why brain spotting's so good, because it's a deeper brain modality. Like when you go through trauma, it's not just a thinking issue. Like the brain registers it like physical pain. So if I showed up with a broken leg or a broken arm or broken neck, you'd be like, let's take care of this person. Well, what happens when I show up with a broken heart? The message is often, for men especially, is get over it. Suck it up. Be a man. Rub some dirt on it, motor oil, whatever. And when a lot of these things can impact us to where it's not just a thinking now situation, it is a physical situation. My body can have manifestations of trauma. My relational impact, spiritually, trauma can impact us on all levels. And so when people say it's all just made up, it's all in your head, it's not true. It's made up as much as like a broken arm or broken leg is, And so the last 30 years of research in, the mental health field, and I want to validate the word you just used, psychobabble. Like we made a lot of this up. Yeah. Like we're just giving name to energy that God's always known about and put a diagnosis to it or whatever. That's why I don't get caught up in diagnosis too much. But like there is a manifestation of a wound, and it seems like it's a wound of the heart. And when I say heart, I'm talking like the ancients use the term heart, mind, body, and soul, all wired together. Yeah. It's
your
a wound.
Essence.
It's who you are, your core. And so those core longings you talk about, part of that gets hurt, and sometimes all of it is, and it's sabotaged. And if we think and we feel in our essence we're no good because this thing happened to us, a lot of us will grow up and prove it, or we'll try to. And so there's that down rider. And so if you have a rescue come along, it's like, really, for me? Never's happened before now. And so like that buy-in you're talking about of like, are you continuing to believe a lie that has been there for years? Well, some people think, well, that's who I am, but the interesting thing is I like to ask this question, but were you born thinking that way? Mm-hmm. No, we're not born thinking that we're no good and that we're coming up short. And where no one wakes up one day and says, let me see what I can do to screw up my life. Let me go have an affair. Let me go out and get on crack cocaine. It's like, so how do those things happen in my life? How do I become a rageaholic? How do I become an alcoholic? How do I become a workaholic? Which is the most acceptable addiction in the Western culture today, by the way, but it'll kill us like anything else. How do I become in this place of addiction? And addiction, I really love Gabor Mate's perspective on this. It's just pain medication. It's just pain medication. You find people that are addicted to something. I'm looking at somebody with some pain that they're trying to take care of. And you can be addicted to religion as well. There's a difference between religion and relationship.
Yeah. I have that conversation with folks a lot in the recovery community. It's like, Jesus doesn't want your addiction. He wants your healing. Because switched addiction it's a real thing, and just by way of substance. But I know a lot of people who have switched their addiction from whatever the substance may be to Jesus. He does not want your addiction. He wants your heart. He wants you. He wants relationship, not just the chasing another emotional or dopamine hit by a worship experience or whatever it may be. It just, you can chase after the experiences and miss Jesus every single time. If you encounter him and you sit with him, you allow him to suck the venom out, the very thing that you're just trying to numb, then it changes your whole perspective, your freedom. Once you experience it, it's not something I can tell you all about it, and it may not ever make any sense. And it probably doesn't until you experience it. But if you can just acknowledge the fact that something like that is true and it's available for you, really, then the possibility for it being your reality becomes real.
I believe we all have some sort of addictive thinking.
Yeah.
I really do, because of pain. So we all do things to try to not feel pain. It may not look like a guy with needle tracks in his arm, but it may be other things that we do that are good in a sense, right? I use in quotation marks there, that we think, but we're absent from relationship. We're not there for our kids. We're not tuned into our wife's heart. Number of things.
Yeah. Wordle, or, Netflix, YouTube, whatever it may be, your work, hunting, fishing. I used to go to that stuff for life. And horses, like all that cowboy, whatever adventure, that was my life. That's where I went, and it was really realizing that I wanted, in my pursuit for truth over tradition, I wanted to really love my wife differently than what I saw. Again, like, I'm not bashing my dad. We don't have a relationship right now because of where things are in his just his continued behavior towards me and my children and my children's children. Just stuff coming out. And he's like, I'm trying to do better, but until you don't, and when you don't, you invite stuff in that my kids don't need to have. It shatters their heart. It invites dark presence, and that can't happen. Things have to shift, and I need you to come along with that. But, and I kind of wanted to go to this spot earlier. Ian, you were asking, like, when we were talking about Hamish, and his dad saying, I got to see you become a man. I wanted to offer this because we touched on it. Not everybody has that opportunity, but what if it's the absolute opposite of that? Not even just the absence of it, but the opposite of it. You're nothing but a worthless piece of whatever, and they continue to tell you that. Like, you're not. What you're doing is crap. You don't need to be doing this. You're wasting your time. You're not doing the right things. Do they not validate it, but they unvalidate it. They curse it. What do you do with that? You know, Jesus himself said when he was in a house ministering to the hearts of people, and his mother and his brothers didn't believe in him at this point, by the way. They came to talk to him. No doubt, because he's causing a ruckus. They had a care and a concern for him, but they didn't understand the larger story, what was going on. He says, who are my mother and my brothers? These are my mother and my brothers. Anyone who does the will of my Father. Right? He also says in Matthew chapter 10 that don't think that I came to bring peace but a sword. I've come to set a son against his father, a daughter against her mother-in-law, a daughter against her mother. The enemies, your enemy will be of your own household. So if you are moving in the glory of the kingdom, you're moving towards your glory, there may be more opportunity for the enemy to try to sow some more venom into old wounds through the people that aren't tracking with you in the kingdom. Because again, what is the goal of it all? It's not to separate family. It's not to take you from your seat in heaven. It is to keep you from operating with the beloved authority as a co-heir with Christ, bringing the kingdom of heaven into your world today. So the enemy doesn't want that to happen. He will come for old wounds in new ways. He knows that we can stay in trauma la la land, Chan. That's what I call that.
Yeah.
Trauma la la land.
I like it.
Just with this victim mindset of, oh, poor, pitiful me. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to eat a worm. You know, we can stay in that space if the venom exists within us. It's easy. He just has to add another little drop or stir it up a little bit so that it's more agitated, and then it moves back throughout the body like you talked about.
And I know we don't have enough time today to dig into all that, but a lot of us can find an identity in that venom that we have to change. You can't do that and have freedom. You can't do that and have peace.
No.
You can't do that and have healthy relationships.
And I think that's part of the venom's effect, you know, like a wound happens, the venom, you know, has its effect on us. It starts to mold and shape our identities. And, you know, Joseph, you just as an example, like you touched on recovery communities, like people who struggle with addictions, like define themselves by their addictions, you know, and that just is a huge pet peeve of mine. Like an alcoholic who says, like, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, like you are defining yourself by your addiction. And we do it with all of the addictions. You know, I'm a porn addict, I'm a sex addict, you know, workaholic. Those become the things, the lens that we look through when we see ourselves in a mirror. But we have to take off those glasses to see ourselves clearly. We need to invite Jesus to renew our eyes so that we can see ourselves the way that he sees us.
Yeah. And what that looks like, oh, I love that you just brought that up. So Revealed Image Ministries, that's our ministry, right? Exists because of Romans 8, what God's done for us, and the process that Jesus invited me into by way of first revelation. He said, stop asking to be made. You're already created. Time for you to be revealed. Then Romans 8 fell open in my lap. Creation is waiting with eager anticipation for the children of God to be revealed. Romans 8:19. And then I found myself standing at the Accademia in Florence, Italy, looking at Michelangelo's Prisoners. And it was Atlas that really caught my attention because he's stuck. There's nothing he can do about it. The weight of his world was crushing him. and he couldn't move, couldn't really breathe. You could tell he was a man, and he had enough vision because his eyes were exposed, but you could see the struggle. You could see the agony, even though you couldn't see his face. The struggle was in his body. I just stood there and stared at it.
Michelangelo,
Michelangelo.
He did that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I stared at it and stared at it and stared at it. So this all happened within like a 2 or 3 week period. And Jesus with the revelation, then the scripture, and then standing there, and he just inviting me into the process. Didn't really say anything. It was just like the presence of God was there. And then at the end of that hallway is Michelangelo's David. It's fully revealed. Mm-hmm. And he's standing there. He's holding. He's not bowed up at the enemy. He's not posing, acting like a tough guy. There's some fear, reverence, like he understands what's coming up, but he knows he's not gripping everything tight. You know, he's fear will make you pucker, right? So he's standing in such a way that he's not puckered, but he's not also bowing up. He's got the sling like loosely draped over his shoulder, and he's holding the stone in his hand. He's not gripping it tight. It's just kind of, he's just holding it. And I'm just standing there staring at all that and then looking at the gaze on his face. And I realized David was the giant. And to become that guy requires the process of not being Atlas. So how do you become David instead of Atlas, right? The whole philosophy behind that was Michelangelo said he just revealed the image God already put inside the stone. Mm-hmm. So you allow God to chip away everything that's not you so that you can be free. And then what's cool, Chan, going back to your point, we can put on Michelangelo's glasses. It's a big metaphor throughout the book. And it's just a metaphor. I'm not saying that you like channel some sort of the Renaissance prodigies magic sauce. You put on the eyes of Jesus. You see what Jesus sees. You submit the same way that the stone does. You don't make this happen. You don't chisel away at yourself. You submit the same way that the stone submitted to Michelangelo's chisel. And that's how God goes about the process of revealing you. And guess what? Being hit by a chisel doesn't feel good.
No, you know, I'd like to ask Michelangelo and be like, were you just having a bad season? Were you just having a bad day when you started chiseling away on Atlas? Like, was he just like, this is how I feel? You know, like, was he just, what a symbolic representation of what so many of us relate to. A lot of people use this idea of Atlas all the time to describe just being overwhelmed, carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'd love to sit down and have just a cup of Italian coffee with him and ask that question. And the other thing is I think I'm going to start putting on my questionnaire when people come in, how often they pucker. Like
yeah.
Often,
well,
that's a new symptom.
You learn everything about that when you ride horses. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The thing about the Michelangelo's David too, and I want to offer this by way of encouragement for our listeners and as a reminder for ourselves, going back to if your father doesn't validate you or he unvalidates or curses even what it is that you do. There were 2 previous artists that tried to tackle this stone that the David was carved from. They said, this is worthless. Nothing can be done with this stone.
Big crack in it.
Yeah, it was broken.
Yep.
Nothing can be done with this because it's broken. Until the craftsman got a hold of it. Mm-hmm. The one who saw as Jesus sees. Mm-hmm. So if your story is filled with cracks, if your story does not have someone in your life that will validate you or honor you, and in fact does the opposite of that and curses you, there is one who sees you. It's the one who created you. He loves you. He knows you. And he made the choice to make himself lower than the angels just for a time, to die a cursed death so that you could have his life. It's the blood of Jesus that allows us to overcome the evil that has tried to consume us. Then as we walk with him and we stay on trail with Jesus, on the pathway, close to him, learning his unforced rhythms of grace, then we get to share that story with confidence and do what Peter says. Be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. When you stay close to the shepherd and you allow him to suck the venom out of your veins, to anoint your head with oil, to keep all the bugs and the gnats and the stuff as the shepherd does. That's why they anoint the sheep's heads with oil, is to keep the bugs from entering their brain through their nose and their ears, right? Those are the lies and the thoughts. So when you operate outside of your anointing and you live outside of your anointing, you're making yourself vulnerable to be consumed by the things that are not supposed to be inside of you. Stay inside of your anointing. Stay close to the shepherd. He and he alone knows what your heart needs. This is why I say shut up and listen. Don't figure this out on your own. Ask the questions. And when you're on trail with Jesus, you will come into contact with other people who are on trail with Jesus. Mm-hmm. You'll have outriders. I say this all the time, that a beloved son has beloved brothers. An outrider also has outriders.
Yeah, we're not alone. We're not alone.
We're not alone. What you believe matters. It has power and authority in your life. The venom that is in you is keeping you from operating in the fullness of your glory. It's keeping you from partnering with Jesus for his kingdom to come into your world. And no amount of trying harder will take care of it. I guarantee you that your trying will produce failure if you do not allow Jesus to take the venom from your veins. There will be some success, just enough to keep you motivated to keep going. The enemy's crafty in that way. But you will not have transformation within your bloodline for your family for 1,000 generations if you do not allow Jesus to take the venom out of your veins. That's what I want for my children and my children's children. So our trail marker for today is to just simply ask Jesus that question. Where does venom linger in my body? Where does venom linger in my mind? We've been talking about trauma, right? And trauma is often, in the brain, is often referred to as Swiss cheese, right? It's got holes in it. You guys can maybe disagree, but I don't think that it's holes in the brain. I think it's darkness. It might show up as a hole when you shine light on it through a scan, but it's darkness. It's not a hole. These are places that the kingdom of darkness has gained access. This is where bitterness of unforgiveness has taken root in our lives. The scripture warns us not to do. Don't let bitterness take a root. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. So you don't have holes in your brain. You have dark spots. Things that we've closed up and given permission for the kingdom of darkness to have authority. Jesus can restore those places. The darkness cannot comprehend the light, cannot consume it, cannot snuff it out. So you can't make this happen, but when you invite Jesus into that space, it's transformed. This is why Scripture says the Holy Spirit will transform you by the renewal of your mind. So enter into that process. Jesus, where does venom exist in my body? And then shut up and listen.